If you're a Python developer who builds for the web, there's this familiar routine, right? You build this amazing, powerful backend, and then you hit a wall, and that wall is almost always made of JavaScript. Well, today, we're going to look at a library called FastHTML that's really trying to tear that wall down with a Python-first approach to web development. I mean, you've been there, haven't you? You craft this really elegant Python service, and then you have to completely switch gears to wrestle with React or Vue or Svelte, and the whole universe of build tools and state management, it can be exhausting. But what if you could just skip most of that? What if you could stay in Python, the language you already know and love, for pretty much everything? And that, right there, is the core promise of FastHTML. See, instead of building a Python API that just slings JSON back and forth to a JavaScript front end, FastHTML lets you build apps that send fully formed HTML directly from the server. It pulls this off by smartly bundling together a few best-in-class tools. You've got the super fast Starlet web framework under the hood, the interactivity magic of HTMX, and its own secret sauce, a little something called fast tags. So how in the world does it let you build HTML without actually, writing angle brackets in HTML files? Well, the magic is in this concept called fast tags. The idea is actually incredibly simple but really powerful. What if every single HTML tag was just a Python function? Just take a look at this. Now, that isn't some weird template language you have to learn. That's pure regular Python. We're just calling a function. In this case, it's a capital P, which stands for a paragraph tag. And that first argument, let's do this, that's just the content that's going to go right inside the tag. And boom, that one simple function call generates this perfectly standard, clean HTML. Did you notice how the keyword argument class was automatically turned into the class attribute? That's the entire pattern right there. Positional arguments become the tag's content, and keyword arguments become its attributes. It's so intuitive, it almost feels like cheating. And what's really cool is that this approach scales beautifully. On the left, you see a nested form selector built with these Python functions. It's structured, it's totally readable, and your code editor can even help you out with auto-completion. On the right, well, that's the raw HTML equivalent, and it's just so much more verbose. You're basically getting the power of Python's composition to build your UI. And it even cleverly handles reserved Python words like for by just letting you add an underscore. So simple. Okay, so we can build little components. That's cool. But how do you actually string these things together into a live, running web application? Let's take a look at just how ridiculously simple that is. Honestly, building a complete app boils down to just 4 basic steps. First, you set up the app object. Then you tell it what URL to listen for using a simple decorator. Third, you write a function that just returns your UI using those fast tags. And finally, you tell it to run. That's really it. Let's see what that looks like in code. And here it is, the whole thing. That @art decorator, that's our router. The function itself, foo, just returns a tuple of our fast tags. But check this out, this is the really magical part. See that name, string, type hint? FastHTML is smart enough to see that and automatically pull the name query parameter right from the URL for you. No more digging through request objects. And at the very end, serve just spins up the web server. There is practically zero boilerplate here. All right, displaying data is great. But real apps need to get data from the user, right? So how does FastHTML handle forms without turning into a total nightmare? This, my friends, is where that Python-first approach really, really starts to pay off. So instead of manually parsing all the form data from a web request, you just don't. You simply type hint your route handler with a standard Python data class, and FastHTML automatically unpacks all the form data right into it for you. It's incredible. Want to pre-fill a form with existing data? There's a fill form utility for that. You can even pass the Python route function itself directly to the form's action attribute. Everything is designed to keep you thinking in Python, not in HTTP. So you might be wondering, how does a server-rendered app feel so fast and interactive without constant full-page reloads? The answer is a brilliant library called HTMX, and it's baked right into FastHTML. Think of it like giving your plain old HTML superpowers. You add a few of these special HX-attributes to a button or a link, and you're basically telling the browser, hey, when somebody clicks this, don't reload the whole page. Just go fetch a tiny piece of new HTML from this URL and cleverly swap it into this specific spot on the current page. It's how you get that modern dynamic feel without writing a single line of JavaScript. But FastHTML isn't just about rendering tags and handling forms. It really aims to be a complete toolkit. batteries included, giving you what you need to build a real-world application right out of the box. For instance, it comes with something called Monster UI, which is a library of pre-built components to quickly create really sharp-looking interfaces. For your database needs, there's FastLite, a super simple way to do create, read, update, and delete operations on SQLite. And when you need real-time updates, think live notifications or dashboards, it has built-in helpers for WebSockets and server-sent events. It even has a clean way to handle things like user authentication before a request ever hits your main logic. So with all these different pieces, it's really important to understand the core philosophy behind FastHTML, what it's specifically designed to do, and maybe just as importantly, what it's not designed to do.
FastHTML is absolutely laser-focused on one thing, building web applications where the server's main job is to send back HTML. It's a return to a more classic, powerful web architecture. So let's be super clear. It is not a replacement for something like FastAPI if your goal is to build a JSON API for a totally separate client-side framework like React or Vue. And that's not a flaw, that is the entire point.
And that really brings us to the fundamental idea here. The entire philosophy is to let Python developers do what they do best, write Python. It's about embracing the simple, powerful, and time-tested architecture of hypermedia, where you're not shipping complex data structures back and forth. You're just sending the browser the exact HTML it needs, right when it needs it. In a world where front-end development seems to get more and more complex every single year, FastHTML makes this really compelling case for a kind of radical simplicity. It suggests that for a huge number of web applications out there, the best path forward might not be yet another new JavaScript framework, but actually a return to a more powerful and a much, much more Pythonic way of building for the web.